Bro, there is literally no way for you to harvest the biomass or something. Oh, how much? Howdy there, gamers. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be looking at the After the Flash Mutant Guide. Now, this is going to act as a audiobook for the Blight, Rad-C, Rad-X, and Descendant documents, so that you can understand all of these in detail. One quick warning, some of these things are subject to change in the future. I will have a list of all of the big changes that you need to know about, as the pinned comment, right underneath this video. But, yeah, so let us get into it. Background. Shortly after the nuclear barrages later coined the Flash, the surviving populace faced a new, rising, and potentially cataclysmic threat, a strange new illness with no known cure or origin, the radiation-accelerated disease. Taking entire towns within days, survivors of the Flash lived in fear of an outbreak. No country was safe from the disease, but areas with more severe levels of radiation suffered far worse than those with less. The confusion of the Flash left many nuclear missiles off course, detonating early through miscalculation or defenses, or just outright failing to detonate, leaving radioactive waste scattered throughout the wastelands of former countries. Those infected with the disease gradually lose control of themselves, with the disease eventually taking total control. Mutants work together with a singular end goal, the infection of all healthy humans, to take over the post-apocalyptic world. Infection. Airborne spores from biomass growths or extended decomposition of a Rad-5+ mutant corpse are a potential hazard for uninfected individuals. Infection can be as quick as seconds to minutes depending on exposure levels. The spores released by decaying mass or the biomass can even clog up gas mask filters. Example, the spores from the biomass inside of Lake Mead Nuclear could infect in seconds if inhaled, and it can also clog filters within 5 minutes. Direct contact. Individuals can be infected through physical attacks by Rad-4 and above, deep wounds such as significant stabbings, and injections from leechers' barbed cells into open skin. Excessive contact with infected flesh and blood may also spread the disease. Additional details. Clearly shown in the name, radiation accelerates the disease's progression. The higher the intensity of radiation, the quicker the speed of the change. Radiation also allows for the growth and sustainment of biomass. Example. The radiation inside of Lake Mead Nuclear allows a mutant to change from a Rad-4 to a Rad-6 in days, whereas a mutant roaming in the wasteland could take years to do so. However, the radiation in that area is strong enough to kill a normal human within minutes of exposure. D-radiators. Created shortly after the Korean crisis in 2031, D-radiators were initially used to treat the soldiers sent that survived the singular nuclear strike that ended the entire crisis. Large-scale manufacturing was done by the United States and its allies as an insurance, and was distributed to government bunkers, ultimately finding its way into the hands of survivors of the Flash. D-radiators consist of a fluid compound injected primarily through a syringe into a vein or artery. The solution inside flushes the body of radioactive compounds whilst still being painful to those infected with a Rad-X, as it's still, is killing off the disease. While scrap towns would rarely have supplies of D-radiators, the resources of larger, wealthier factions like the USCPF and SLF would be capable of manufacturing some for sale, while the CDF would unwillingly distribute them as needed. When used against the later stages of Rad-X, 5+, the radiators act similar to tranquilizers, starving the disease of the radiation it requires, allowing for capture of a mutant, albeit incredibly risky and, stupid. Here's a flowchart for the Rad-X disease levels. Naming system. In the post-apocalyptic wasteland, news and information came almost solely from other survivors for many years. Long-range communications such as radios were non-functional or only usable by militaristic post-Flash organizations such as the USCPF and SLF. These groups classified each stage according to a numerical value, such as Rad-7B, Rad-6A, Rad-8B, blah. Anyway, the lack of communication and verifiable information is the origin of most of the nicknames, such as Marauder or Leecher. Because survivors' accounts are so scarce, most survivors only know the bare minimum of each mutant, such as their appearance and basic abilities. The gruesome visage of the mutants, combined with the rumors, cause so many to be irrationally fearful of the mutants. Rad 1. Incubation. A period of time between the infection and initial symptoms of the disease showing up varies from less than a week to several months, depending on the amount of radiation afflicting the host's body. It can be detected through blood pricking and is not infectious. If the infected person is discovered and treated with radiators, this stage can be cured within a day. Rad 2. Green and yellow sickness. Flu-like symptoms after the virus's incubation period. The disease at this point weakens the immune system, making it much easier for radiation to pierce the body. Subjects may be exposed to vomiting, headaches, nausea, coughing, sneezing, fatigue, hallucinations, and fever. Their skin pigmentation begins to change, coloring a pale yellow or green. If the infected person is discovered and treated with multiple deradiators, this stage can be cured within a week. Stage 2 is the beginning of actual risk towards others, as those infected who have reached this stage may unknowingly infect others through bodily fluids. Rad-3 Variant 1 Refugee. More serious conditions start to occur. Hair loss, skin pigmentation continues, infected become deeply paranoid and suffer schizophrenic-like symptoms. The symptoms of the previous stage still continue. Rad-3B, or Variant 2, the Outcast. If the infected person is treated with multiple deradiators at this stage over the course of a month, the infection is halted and the disease dies off. This process is extremely painful and not a guarantee, with the noticeable side effect that the skin pigmentations turn to a deeper red color. This pseudo-cure is a mixed blessing, as while they're no longer capable of being infected, and will not mutate further, the fear of mutation by most survivors drives these outcasts out. Likewise, health problems plague them for the rest of their lives. Their skin is incredibly prone to burning from sunlight, and their immune system is degraded, resulting in many dying from infectious diseases. In some cases where the deradiator treatment fails, the infected will continue to advance along the stages, but their skin will maintain the red pigmentation. It will gradually fade over time, but is still noticeable. Meanwhile, for those who are cured, the years of isolation from the outside world will inevitably build up, and many will suffer from emotional and or mental trauma or illness. Rad 4 Marauder. Skin fully changes to a deeper shade of yellow or green. At this stage, Rad-X begins influencing the infected's mind. Away from higher stage mutants, Marauders become reclusive, continuing the symptom of the previous stage. However, when in groups or when higher stage mutants are present, Marauders seemingly shift to the single-minded purpose of infecting others. Retaining human intelligence and strength, they plan and coordinate with other mutants to spread the disease. Marauders act as frontline commanders for the disease, whether to kidnap uninfected or to raid towns to further spread the virus. Fully capable of using firearms, their numbers and capabilities mean they offer a significant challenge against opponents. Rad 5, the Sapien or Undead. Once an infected human has reached this stage, the disease takes full control. Infected will attempt to find a source of radiation and will stay close to it. At this point, intensive physical alteration of the human body begins. Limbs may detach, bones snap, and muscles contort, giving a horrific visage that sometimes has them referred to as the undead. Victims of the stage seem to be locked inside of their own bodies, with reports that sapiens have been seen talking and moaning to themselves. However, when sighting uninfected, they go eerily silent while attempting to kill or maim those who have entered their vicinity. Sapiens act as guards for mutant dens, spreading spores to create biomass from their exposed wounds. Lacking any feeling of pain, sapiens are capable of wielding their exposed bones as makeshift blades, spreading the disease to those unfortunate enough to be hit. If a marauder is present, they can be given orders, but lack the intelligence to do anything other than blindly attack if not. Rad-6A, the Creeper. A possible transformation of sapiens. Creepers' bodies undergo further mutation. Their skin tightens around their bones and muscle structure, going so far as to prominently show off their ribs as the skin tightens around them. Their joints change to allow inverted movement, and combined with their streamlined body, grants them the ability to climb surfaces at high speeds. A lumpy growth appears on their upper back, a precursor of their next stage, forcing the creeper into a quadrupedal hunchback form. While all mutants, save for the sapien, are capable of communication through speech, the A strain is unique as both creepers and leechers are able to mimic the voice of individuals they meet. They usually fake a cry for help in order to lure unsuspecting prey into their ambushes. Additionally, they gain their characteristic cat eye look as their eyes are altered to give near perfect low light vision. Creepers act as scouts for the mutants, using their skills to lure away patrols. Creepers rely heavily on other mutants for frontal combat as their weakened bodies mean they are unable to use weapons more powerful than a basic knife, or wear any meaningful armor for protection. When a marauder is present, they can further coordinate their traps with fellow mutants. Rad-7A, the Leecher. The following stage after the creeper, leechers are even more physically altered from the lumpy growth on the back of a creeper. Leechers grow an additional limb. They can also gain a second head, with the purpose of spitting barbed biomatter filled with disease and acidic fluids. Additionally, at the knuckles, the skin peels back to reveal bones sharpened into a claw-like form, while overall their form grows taller and thinner. The Leecher's new transformations allow it to combat uninfected toe-to-toe. Their extra limb allows them to climb walls and suspend themselves from ceilings to ambush unsuspecting individuals, while the exposed bones are sharp enough to stab through clothing and skin, infecting those they injure. Their slim stature, along with longer limbs, and internal mutations allow for bursts of speed seemingly unnatural, making them fearsome in close quarters. The barbed biomatter their second head spits can fly up to 15 feet, piercing exposed flesh and burning skin, infecting those it injures. Much like their predecessor, leeches are not built for frontal combat, but are more than capable of dragging away a victim. Leecher barbed cells can be blocked by thick clothing as simple as a leather jacket. Rad-6B, the Hitman. The alternate transformation after Sapiens, the Hitman's mutations are muscular focused. Their bones are strengthened and muscular growth is accelerated disproportionately, with one arm staying relatively human and the other growing to massive proportions. All over the arm, portions of skin harden and grow in patchwork fashion. Hitmen possess superhuman strength in this arm, capable of shattering bone and throwing fully grown men. This disproportionate weight means that the Hitman moves at a slow speed, incapable of matching the speeds of an average person's full sprint. Hitmen act as frontline troops for mutation, breaking down defenses and attacking defenders. Their mind is weakened after their transformation, meaning a Hitman's only tactic when a marauder is not around is to simply rush the opponent and pound them into submission. However, this does not mean that they're incapable of communication or in any means stupid. They simply just prefer aggressive tactics. Rad-7B, the Crusher. The following stage of the Hitman, the Crusher's other arm grows to equal size as the enlarged one. Bones become denser and their skin thickens all over the torso and arms. The patches originally on the arm also spread to the torso and other arm, becoming thick and hard enough to fully block blade slashes and blunt trauma, while also absorbing the impacts of small bullet calibers. With the redistribution of weight, Crushers are also able to move at higher speeds, capable of matching human in sprint, but with the altered center of mass, their control at high speeds is diminished, causing many crushers to simply charge in a straight line until they stop, forcibly or gradually. Crushers are also significantly better in combat than their previous stage. With their thickened skin and weight, their invulnerability to the common pistol calibers and wastelander weapons, Crushers can easily take out multiple uninfected. However, without the presence of a marauder, their tactics are roughly the same as their smaller brethren: blindly attack until one of the two parties can no longer do so. Pistol calibers consist of all calibers smaller than and also including 45 ACP. Higher calibers, such as rifles, will penetrate their skin. Rad-8A, the malicious ones. In the final form of the Type A variation, malicious ones seem more like Rad-X personified than a human being transformed. Growing a third head capable of spewing corrosive acid, capable of melting various metals, malicious ones' limbs also grow longer, and a second hooked limb grows alongside the other. This allows them total control over climbing and hanging, and also increases their overall speed and agility to superhuman levels. Some instances have hair-like follicles. Their overall intelligence is also regained sometime along their transition into the final stage of Rad-X, allowing them to create complex traps and manufacture items for other mutants. Like malevolent ones, they seemingly lack emotions, with the purpose of spreading the disease as efficiently as possible. As a result of their increased intelligence, malicious ones are the leaders of mutants, capable of issuing orders to marauders and organizing all other mutants. When in presence of a Rad-8, lower stages of mutants seem to gain intelligence simply due to proximity. Due to the overpowered nature of the Rad-8A, it is only allowed to be played by LPM+. Survivors of Rad-8s are very few and far between, making most Wastelanders believe that they are myths used to scare others. Rad-8B, the malevolent ones. The final stage of the Type B variation, malevolent ones grow even more physically adept, larger than an average human. All of their bone and muscular structure is enlarged to allow incredible strength. Their skin also hardens into a chitinous-like substance capable of deflecting or halting most small firearms, but does nothing to stop explosives or fire. Unlike the Hitman Okrusha, their intelligence can be compared to humans, though they seemingly lack emotions, with their only goal being infecting more and more people. Like the malicious ones, they too can command other mutants and seemingly increase lower stages intelligence within proximity. Due to the overpowered nature of the Rad-8B, just like the Rad-8A, it is only played by LPM+. Small arms consist of calibers smaller than and up to 50 caliber. Just like the 8A, survivors of the 8B are few and far between, making most Wastelanders believe that they are myths used to scare other individuals. Rad-9, the Beast. Not much is known about this. The only references to it come from US CPF documents. Whether its existence is real or not is speculation within the US CPF's own ranks. This is a story tool similar to the Super Seal suits and is restricted to LPM Plus if ever used. Biomass. While not part of the Rad-X stages, biomass is a byproduct of sapiens and an alternate form of the disease. When in proximity to an adept source of radiation and a sufficient supply of water, biomass can quickly grow in the span of hours to cover entire rooms and buildings, expelling spores in ever-increasing quantity. Biomass consists of organic material similar to the patches of skin grown over the bodies of crushers. along with the bodies of deceased, infected, and any other organic matter such as animals or food. Given sufficient time, it can cover entire rooms and will spread outward, even forcing open access through barricades to allow for continuous growth. When mutants are around, they will tend to its growth through expansion or increasing organic material the biomass has access to. Biomass is immune to bullets and incredibly sturdy against physical trauma, with the only known methods of removing it is continued exposure to flame. Attempts to cut pieces away are incredibly risky as direct skin contact is guaranteed infection, and worthless as the biomass will eventually regrow what was removed. Biomass offers beneficial traits to mutants. Wounds sustained in combat will be healed over time, replaced by growths of biomass over the body. Biomass seems to be able to communicate with later stages of Rad-X infected, with disturbances being investigated by sapiens or higher stages. Attempts to destroy it will also draw mutants in the area to its defense. Plague Towns. Scrap towns unfortunate enough to be fully infected by Rad-X are known as plague towns. Across the wastes, tales of these towns spread, driving the fear of the disease to higher levels. Those that have been discovered are usually destroyed by the factions in the region, for fear of the mutants spreading further. An example of this would be Craterview. The Osaka Medical Bunker Cure. Just as the Osaka Medical Bunker was overrun with mutants, its scientists managed to develop a serum capable of reversing and nullifying the Rad-X disease for any of those who were infected up until stage 5. The doors to the bunker were closed until 2054. It is possible that the scientists still sent out the schematics to other medical bunkers worldwide. The Rad-X vaccine. Created in the early 2070s, the Rad-X vaccine renders Rad-X a non-threat, outright stopping the infection combined with lower radiation levels in the later part of the 21st century. The vaccine soon led to the end of most mutants, though it is not yet universal. ATF-1, 2, 3D Pointer, and Mirage do not have this vaccine. In ATF-5 and Deep 6, only Outcasts and Descendants would exist, not the normal stages. Finally, the guide leaves us with a quick recap for all of the mutant stages. Rad-1 has no symptoms and can be treated with deradiators without any negative effects. Rad-2 has common sickness and can accidentally spread infection, can be treated the same way as above. Rad-3 has hair loss, skin color shifts to pale green and yellow, also having mental breakdowns. Rad-3B, the radiator usage at Rad-3 results in permanently red skin, weak immune system, sensitivity to sunlight. Rad-4, the Marauder, crazed mutant capable of leading other mutants and has no physical problems. However, in private, they do have mental issues and continue their flu-like symptoms. Rad-5, the Sapien, zombie-esque appearance, guards and spreads biomass, and is also capable of detecting biomass being disturbed. Uses broken bones as makeshift clubs and shanks. Rad-6A, the Creeper, is a hunchbacked ambusher capable of mimicking voices and seeing in the dark. Physically weak, it relies on stealth to scout out enemies and lure in prey. The Rad-7A Leecher is taller than an average human, has a skeletal appearance, and uses bones as claws. Sets up traps to isolate and carry off those who are uninfected. The Rad-6B Hitman is an enlarged single arm capable of crushing bones and lifting people. Prefers aggression if not being led by a marauder. And finally, the Rad-7B Crusher. Torso and arms are both covered in a hardened skin and enlarged muscle, able to pick up people and crush through most materials. Hardened skin can block pistol calibers. Icy knowledge. Survivors with no first-hand knowledge of mutants would for the most part know only stories and their nicknames. Official documentation for the USCPF refers to mutants as labeled stages, but most troops in the field would refer to the infected by what they are known as locally. Plague towns would be a constant worry, and sick people would likely be seen as potential threats due to the nature of Rad-X. Due to the grotesque nature of their appearance, survivors are generally disgusted by mutants and terrified of meeting the same fate by being dragged off. Next up, we are going to be looking at Descendants. Now, these are in pretty much every ATF game, so, yeah. Descendants. As Rad-X spread across the United States, the USCPF began experimentation and investigation into the disease. One byproduct of these tests was the creation of Descendants, hybrids of normal humans and later stages of Rad-X. They lived lives of constant inhumane testing. This treatment eventually led to revolts as Descendants and Outcasts overtook facilities, breaking out and eventually escaping. Much like Outcasts, Descendants were forced to live in seclusion, whether through fear of USCPF retribution or the acts of terrified normal wastelanders. Descendants would disguise themselves if forced to interact with others. Many continue to wear clothing taken from their former prisons, the last reminder of their experience. Some factions willingly acknowledge and accept the Descendants into their ranks, as they are both incapable of being infected and unable to spread Rad-X to others. Meanwhile, most factions will just avoid them, or, in the USCPF's case, willingly attack them to remove any trace of their former experiments. The Slugger. Descending from the Hitman stage, Rad-6B, Sluggers have the same overgrown arm as the 6B does. However, instead of a protective and strengthened limb, their arm is entirely nerve-dead and lies limply along their side. Most suffer from severe balance problems as a result, and are forced to use their opposite hand for any task. A common practice is to cut off the dead limb or cover it in an effort to disguise their origin. But like all Descendants, the Sluggers suffer from a compromised immune system and a target on their backs, courtesy of the CPF. The Deadweight. Considered an even worse fate than Sluggers, Deadweights rarely survive without assistance from their brethren. Both arms are completely useless, the nerves entirely dead, and the chest mutation means Deadweights have difficulty breathing. On top of that, the center of balance shift means they have problems walking upright. The Hunchback. Permanently hunched over, hunchbacks are nearly permanently malnourished. Their muscles have wasted away, forcing them to rely on others for even the most basic of physical tasks. Incredibly sensitive to light, many of them are forced to wear sunglasses to even begin bearing the sunlight. The Stickman. Sharing the same problems as the Hunchback, the Stickman also suffers from brittle bones. The second head their predecessors used to spit barbs instead lies limply next to their actual head. The sharpened bones in their knuckles painfully tear their skin from the slightest of movement, and their double-jointed limbs instead make simple movement painful. Their shrunken in skin and skeletal appearance, combined with their tall stature, gives them the name Stickman. Thanks to their mutations and physical problems, Descendants cannot use prosthetics. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the Blight. Now, Blight are only in 7.5 after the Flash Overcast, so don't go using these in any other game other than that. And yeah, let's take a look at it. Overview. Shortly after the end of the nuclear winter, a mysterious virus known as the Blight began to spread across the ruins of the United States. Because it is so new, much about it is still unknown, including how it came to be. What is understood about it is the process which the virus spreads. It begins by infecting certain types of flora and eventually transmitting the disease to various mammals that consume said flora. Overall effects vary, but animals that contract the disease are guaranteed to become incredibly aggressive and dangerous to those around them. Food chains and habitats that house blighted animals risk dire consequences as a result of the animals' increased hostilities from the disease. Animals that are infected with the blight are referred to as blighted animals. The incubation stage of the virus within animals typically takes up to 2 weeks before they begin displaying symptoms. From that period of time, the virus takes roughly around a month to completely take over its host. Unfortunately, the virus causes the animal's death a few weeks after contracting the virus. Blighted animals cannot transmit the blight to humans. animals can transmit the blight to each other. These animals can still attack humans. Humans can only be infected with the blight after ingesting plants, fungi, and animals in blighted habitats. Blighted humans do not randomly go around attacking people. Although flora itself cannot infect animals or humans by touch, plant life, including fungi, that happen to be in areas largely populated by blighted animals, have the potential to poison humans if ingested by them. Flora in blighted regions pose a massive risk to the environment by decomposing nearby marsh, grass, and trees with their toxins, destroying their ability to produce carbon dioxide over time. Because of falling oxygen levels from the lack of carbon dioxide production, areas that are blight hotspots require protective masks to be ventured in and are virtually devoid of non-infected life. Humans that are afflicted by the blight undergo a series of physical and mental changes, including the possibility of the death of most or all cells in the fingers and toes that eventually demand amputation for survival. In areas overtaken by the blight, the main form of transmission of the disease relies on infected fauna blossoming off of lingering radiation, infecting other animals and plants through bodily fluids. Section 2. Effects on humans. Humans tend to be directly unaffected by the blight in terms of normal infection, unlike the animals and plant life of the region. This is due to the fact that transmission of diseases and infections experienced by animals and plants is unlikely to correlate to human transmission. However, humans will still find themselves to be subject to the effects of the blight via pathogen attacks of their immune and endocrine systems if plants or animals in contact with the virus have been consumed. Because the blight cannot effectively latch on to human biology, it becomes more parasitic and attacks the body from the inside, creating flu-like symptoms on a larger scale for the host of the sickness. The blight can also be harmful as it can incorrectly distribute hormones to the human body via the endocrine system, creating heightened emotions and making it difficult for those afflicted to focus. These effects often set in within an hour of ingestion of blighted flesh or any other kind of contaminated material. Furthermore, those afflicted with this sickness, provided they are able to leave the blighted region, will normally be able to pass this within 3 days to a week of recovery. This process is often strenuous and painful, and has a high chance of ending in death if the afflicted stay inside a blighted area for long amounts of time. However, for those that fail to seek treatment once experiencing symptoms of the virus, permanent afflictions are much more likely. Over 2 weeks of not treating the initial symptoms will begin to lead to parts of the body rotting in the form of soft tissue infection, most noticeably the hand and feet, restricting movement. Due to the ingested poison entering the body, those afflicted with the virus have their skin feature rashes and rotting skin from the blight's pathogens taking control of the host's skin cells. Additionally, the nucleocapsid in the virus also affects a person's keratin levels, causing the host to begin to lose their hair, skin, and nails in the more serious stages of the blight's progression. However, these symptoms only occur weeks after it has been transmitted to a human. On top of this, there are also less severe indicators of the disease that alert the individual that they might have the blight, such as a person's pupils and lips having a green tint to them. Despite the unnatural appearances humans with the blight may have, they aren't contagious and cannot spread the disease to other humans. And although they do maintain their level of mental intelligence, many humans that are infected suffer drawbacks to their emotional intelligence and may appear as socially withdrawn to others. In a combination of their behavior and their appearance, along with a general lack of understanding of the disease itself, those with the blight are chased off from settlements and shunned by others in fear that they may catch the disease. In the worst of situations, towards the later stages of the disease, they are susceptible to death from full body necrosis and mental degradation. The intricacies and causes of the virus are not public IC knowledge. The only bits of knowledge that you would know are common knowledge of generally avoiding infested areas, and also what blighted animals are, allowing you to identify them ICly. Section 3. Effects on Flora. Blighted flora don't have the ability to transmit the disease by touch or spread it to other areas. Instead, their primary form of transmission is through ingestion, which has peak transmission rates at the beginning of infestation in a region. Many unsuspecting civilians find themselves infected with blight from flora and fungi because of the carelessness they have whilst traveling through blighted regions. At first, flora that is affected by the blight is usually vibrant in colors, and exhibits many veins around their structure compared to their non-infected counterparts, making it evident that the blight has come to the area. Here, the blight is most poisonous whilst ingested by humans or animals. Young children, animals, and ignorant adults are the most susceptible to this infection at this age, as the bright colors of blighted flora lure them closer. In the middle of the disease progression, the flowers begin to lose their vibrancy while their internal systems begin shutting down. This is because of the blight's interference in the plant's primary function of turning sunlight from photosynthesis into chemical energy to sustain itself. Their chlorophyll fails to produce green pigments, causing the flora to be subject to an extreme form of chlorosis. What is usually a yellowing of leaf tissue becomes a rapid destruction of the plant itself, having the potential to ruin the environmental community nearby it by cutting itself off as a sustainable food source for animals and humans alike. Blighted environments lack saturation and showcase hues of dark colors, most notably purple. Towards the end stages of the virus, the infected flora is given a new responsibility in contrast with its natural productions. Instead of relying on photosynthesis to produce chemical energy, blighted flora use radiosynthesis instead to sustain themselves. Chlorophyll within these plants are revitalized, but not to produce carbon dioxide. Blighted flora transform radiation from the surroundings after the nuclear holocaust into chemical energy that filters radiation. This new process of radiosynthesis lowers radiation levels and enables life to thrive in the environment, although it remains a danger for non-infected life, especially humans. However, oxygen is not the only thing that is emitted from this process. Several low-profile greenhouse gases, most notably carbon monoxide, are emitted from the flora and make it difficult to traverse blighted areas without experiencing breathing obstructions. Carbon monoxide filters that were used by firemen pre-flash, which is common given the area's high concentration of former local law enforcement, can be used to mitigate these adverse effects. Because the concentration of carbon monoxide isn't that high unless by patches of blighted flora, most civilians are usually encouraged to wear protective face coverings to sustain resources. Despite the depressing traits of infected flora, there are some benefits that can be used by humans. For example, radiotrophic fungi is a byproduct of normal plants being infected by the blight, enabling various unique and previously unseen fungi to grow in blighted regions alongside blighted fauna. They usually vary in size and exhibit various medicinal properties, though little know the extent of their properties, and they are usually avoided in fear of getting poisoned. Regions that are infected by the blight are normally above average temperature compared to uninfected locations in Oregon. This is because of the various greenhouse gases that are formed during the radiosynthesis process, which accelerates the process of a flora's chemical energy production. The winter season hardly affects these regions and almost provides a safe zone in the winter for exhausted travelers. But this is highly recommended against due to the presence of blighted animals and a lack of non-infected food sources. On a miscellaneous note, thermal imaging software is difficult to use and practically pointless whilst in blighted regions due to the region's higher concentration of heat and erratic temperature levels of blighted animals. While blighted flora does have medicinal benefits, most people would not know about it because of fear of, getting poisoned. most factions also probably don't know about it, but some might, such as the Cascadian Frontier, and yeah, that's about it. Number 4. Effects on animals. Much like plant life, the blight also has mutative effects on animals. As they are living organisms, the mutation has a more active rate of effect on them, and has the tendency to have much more extreme and noticeable mutations than it does on flora. In similarity to the effects of the disease on blighted flora, animals seem to experience increased fertility and growth rate. The disease also ages blighted fauna faster as well, reducing their life expectancy dramatically, depending on the virus's progression, in addition to a deteriorating nervous system, though they reproduce just as fast as they expire and attack others of their own kind, which balances out their implications on the ecosystem. Blight nests made by cougars and other blighted animals that can spread the disease are the reason why blighted fauna rapidly reproduces in densely wooded areas or further away from larger blighted zones. Efforts to remove them from civilized areas are met with resistance from both blighted cougars and any infected wildlife within the nested area. Notable ailments and issues arise, though, as following generations of blighted animals will experience harmful and weakened mutations that can put them at a disadvantage against threats. When the nuclear winter occurred, herbivores that were infected with the blight were transformed into omnivores with heightened aggressive natures. The blight forces these animals' evolution as their accelerating growth rate demands an expanded diet, forcing them to become very territorial. Other reasons for their aggression can be attributed to natural fights for dominance and necessary means to survive. Radiosynthesis does not only occur in blighted flora. Radiosynthesis in blighted animals not only shortens their lifespan, but also worsens their decaying appearance from nearby radiation. Visually put, barren patches of skin are seen where fur should be. Either having significantly less fur or no fur at all, blighted animals sprout various fungi spores on their backs, shoulders, and legs. Overgrown moss and vines encompass their head, underbellies, and arms. In extreme cases, some blighted animals may have visible bone. This poses a bit of a problem during the winter if the fauna is not able to retain the required amount of energy for radiosynthesis to take place. It also means that seasonal hibernation does not happen as much, which leads to a plethora of predatory creatures in the wild during these times. All blighted animals can be found outside of blighted zones, even if it is relatively unlikely. The only blighted animals that do not have the urge or capability to leave infected areas and spread the disease are blighted black bears and moose, who use their added strength to fill their roles as guardians of the blight. Other animals that have the capability to spread the disease make blighted nests, which spread the disease and allow for reproduction of infected animals. Irresponsible wastelanders in the name of bravery and chivalry that attempt to clear out these nests are met with fierce resistance and, in most cases, injury or death. Fall blighted animals experience increased aggressiveness and hostility towards other animals and humans alike, a result of mutations from the virus. Each blighted animal also has its own appearance, traits, and characteristics that are unique to themselves. Now we get to the actual types of blighted animals. Player animals. Anybody can use these. Mountain wolf. Arguably, blighted mountain wolves are one of the largest threats of the blight. Local to the region are gray wolves, who regularly function in packs ranging from 2 to 5 wolves. Because uninfected mountain wolves treat their packs like family, blighted wolves are confrontational towards humans, even by themselves. However, since the blight does increase their hostility towards other animals regardless of if they are infected with the blight or not, Packs of wolves tend to be unstable and have a higher chance of sustaining injuries from other in their pack over minuscule issues. It is not uncommon to see lone wolves, literally. As the local mountain wolves are the largest out of any other canid in the world, the changes they undergo in their body from the blight are far more exaggerated. While their size does not drastically increase, blighted mountain wolves experience a growth in their canine teeth and claws, resulting in increased pressure from their bites that have the ability to completely cripple a human limb. However, this will discomfort the animal itself and often prevents the animal from eating food properly. Not only does its enlarged teeth decrease its overall lifespan by preventing proper digestion of food, but the amount of energy it can expend in a single setting from an improper diet as well, making a blighted mountain wolf incredibly vulnerable if it is being tracked down by a group of hunters. Because of this, blighted wolves tend to be incredibly skinny, but amass an incredible amount of strength from the blight itself. Their usual shades of brown and gray instead turn into a darker, coal-colored pelt that blends in with the decay of the environment that they are in. As a result of their increased skinniness, their limbs appear more lanky, giving the blighted wolves a taller and scarier appearance. The blighted cougar. The cougar, or mountain lion, remains the largest feline in the Western Hemisphere. The virus adds on to the size of a typical cougar. Their skull and teeth are significantly large and recurved. Their fur is dense and soft, sporting a tawny or light shade of brown. Cougars are active both during day and night and use caves or rocks outcroppings to rest. They are solitary animals, staying close to only female partners or their young, and also are found in remote, lush forests regions rather than being out towards cultivated land. Blighted cougars stalk around their caves and outcroppings, holding their solitary nature despite becoming incredibly aggressive and territorial. Blighted vines, both dead and alive, are visibly seen around the cougar's head and torso. A telltale sign that you are approaching a lair of a blighted cougar is that there will be a skeletal carcass and various mutated plant life around the cave walls and generally the surrounding area. Blighted cougars stalk outside the boundaries of the blighted zones and attack large prey like elk, deer, and humans. Blighted cougars allow blighted plant life to spread through their cave lairs and the animal carcasses it leaves to rot in the woods, extending their reach further out and also becoming a larger danger than most civilians anticipated. While seemingly powerful, blighted cougars have weaker muscle mass and bone density. Even the smallest caliber can cause considerable damage to them and will drastically decrease their energy. The Blighted Wolverine. The wolverine is the equivalent of a small bear, having a small, broad head and a dense, woolly fur coat. Despite their small size, these five-toed, clawed animals are incredibly versatile in combat with others and are a dangerous predator. While mostly relegating themselves to scavenging off of animal carcasses, wolverines are willing to hunt both small and larger prey as well. They are generally uncaring of who or what they come across, and in situations where the animal has been starving, they're noticeably more hostile than usual. As a result of blight mutations, blighted wolverines' hostility skyrockets, displaying symptoms similar to rabies. Their claws become incredibly rugged, and their jaw having the ability to unhinge itself. While the animal suffers from patching and fur loss, the pelt remains very thick. However, the wolverine sheds around its prowling ground, leaving a clear indicator of its whereabouts and a warning for hunters to stay away. They aggressively scavenge for carcasses and search for even the largest of prey or other predators. In their search for others, blighted wolverines rarely stray too far outside of blight boundary lines or their prowling grounds. The blighted wolverine is also covered in dead blighted vines and flora, similar to those of the rest of the mutated animals within blighted zones that have infected flora spiral across their body and around their head. Event-only animals. You are not able to play as these animals unless you gain permission from event managers or LPMs. They only appear in events and are not used in casual roleplay. The Blighted Black Bear. As it already stands, black bears are a formidable threat in the world from their hunting prowess and swimming capabilities. With the blight, black bears have increased muscle mass, size, and claw length. Noticeable discrepancies that are from the blight are their inability to climb as efficiently as their non-infected counterparts due to the offset in their mass their bodies experience. Coupled with their need to feed very often to sustain their weight, black bears can easily lose their effectiveness after only a week of being deprived of food. Unlike black bears prior to infection, blighted black bears seem to be overly aggressive and will actively hunt for food indiscriminately, including humans, making this animal one of the most dangerous and unpredictable animals within blighted areas. However, blighted black bears will only hunt within blighted areas and will rarely leave their zone, as they do not have the capabilities to spread the disease. Strangely enough, and despite the changes in behavior from the disease, female black bears retain their maternal instincts and are homicidically driven to any living organism that gets too close to it. The Blighted Moose. The moose is one of the largest animals in the state of Oregon. An adult moose stands at 10 feet tall, and their antlers can be up to 6 feet in length and are used for either mating or a display of strength. While not commonly used as a weapon, they are something to be fearful of. Prior to the transformation under the blight mutation, moose are non-aggressive animals that usually tend to keep their distance from humans and are not as skittish as other similar species such as deer. However, if provoked, it will use their strength to injure or even kill someone or something that dared to provoke it. From the beginning stages of the disease, the moose's behavior becomes altered. Compared to usual antlers for moose prior to infection, blighted antlers are larger and more distorted compared to average moose antlers, and are also not covered in velvet, the material that covers the antlers of deer, elk, moose, and other similar species. The lack of velvet on their antlers often makes the animal appear much more terrifying than they actually are. The cartilage has a red tint to them as the velvet hangs off of the antlers, almost as if it were dead skin. Unlike the unafflicted moose, blighted moose are aggressive to whatever living being comes close to them. Blighted areas, their calves, or if a non-blighted animal comes into their sight. Their thick pelts feature numerous patches where fur is missing and are falling apart, leaving exposed areas of their undercoat and their decomposing bodies. A unique addition to their body from the blight is dried vines of blighted plant life that spiral around their antlers and their body, often digging into the body of the animal itself and causing it pain. Blighted moose tend to stay within the boundaries of the blight, but will go outside of it to attack animals that are too close or foraging for plant life to consume. Staff-only animals. No matter the circumstances, these animals can only be played by staff members. Cryptids. Cryptids are a peculiar enigma whose existences are fueled by hushed rumors and stories, notably passed down generations by the indigenous people of Oregon. Once believed to be a folk tale and a common theme in pre-Flash campfire stories, these beings have widely different appearances depending on the story. None of these descriptions, however, correlate with pre-war recorded animals, even in official government and university documents. Many wandering travelers and civilians of Oregon towns believe that stories of cryptids are falsified encounters, akin to legends and myths spread centuries before of various mythological beasts like werewolves, wendigos, and Bigfoot. These beliefs, however, seem only to be held by wandering travelers and those who aren't local. For those whose roots have been in the state for decades, even centuries, the tales of cryptids, even post-Flash, still strikes fear in their hearts. Next up, we are going to be taking a look at the Rad-C. Now, the Rad-C are not currently playable, but, they are important to Mirage's history, so I figured I would still discuss them. Besides, they're relatively interesting, so, yeah. Some of this is probably outdated. I'm only really discussing them for the historical value. If they are playable again, I will make sure that I update the pinned comment to inform you guys about it. And yeah. Rad-C strains and variants. Born from the failed eradication of the Lake Med nuclear biomass by the GCSA serum, these new creatures take a gangly, putrid appearance, barely humanoid. They do not infect through fluids or transmission. Instead, they drag victims, dead or alive, into the biomass for them to be consumed and spat out as one of them. Due to the mutations achieved by the biomass for its survival, it now thrives in the dry weather of Lake Mead, posing a problem even after winter has ended. The guide leaves us with an OC note discussing how the numbers designation for each mutant is only OC. Rad-C1, the Bug Eyes. The most plentiful of the rising threat, the Rad-C1 takes the shape of a grotesque, disfigured humanoid who appears to be a mashup of walking biomass and remains of a human body. The head has lost the recognizable features of a human face. Where the nose and mouth once was is now a gaping maw full of large, sharp teeth. The eyes are now a deep hue of red and bulge from their eye sockets, with small hexagonal compounding like those of an insect. Their ears are altogether gone, giving them a smoothly bald appearance. Their unusual eyes give them perfect night vision, and an unnatural ability to detect the slightest movement at impossible distances. Their gaping maw of a mouth can unhinge, allowing massive bite wounds, or enabling them to chomp through a limb cleanly. The body has been reconstructed as well. Despite their stocky appearance, ribs are easily seen pressing against the skin, which is a mottled black, cloaked in a fuzzy hair-like material. Muscles are visible, rippling beneath the skin, but the interior of these once human hosts is vastly altered. The internal organs are all but non-existent, an organic concoction of liquid and biomass in their stead. Lacking vital organs to perforate, lower caliber weaponry and inversely over-penetrative rounds are nearly useless. Should proficiently sized holes be blown open in the Rad-C1, this fluid spills out and the creature will die, shriveling up into a skeletal frame nearly instantly. The legs and feet remain largely unaltered, but the congruity of form ends at the arms. From their wrists sprouts wickedly sharp bone protrusions, wholly replacing their hands. Unnaturally strong, their sharpness and the physical force behind them lets them penetrate armor with ease, and their movements are startling fast, eviscerating victims in seconds when they've gotten too close. Rad-C2, the flytrap. No longer recognizable as once being human, the C2 is a quadrupedal terror. Shrunken in overall stature, the C2 is a nimble adversary capable of quickly closing the gap between itself and prey. The head, if it can still be called that, has split nearly in two. Ringed with the razor-sharp teeth, the Venus flytrap visage holds no discernible eyes or ears. The creature is completely blind. This is a trap. However, as the C2 sees through smell, sound, and shifts in the ear through follicles of hair on its body, the C2 is much slimmer than seemingly possible, with the entire torso rippling with muscles beyond the same mottled black skin and hair as on the C1. The back has quill-like blade protrusions adorning its back, which it uses both offensively and defensively. Useful in melee to protect its unprotected flank, the C2 can also roll forward from a sprint to shred whatever it impacts. The arms and legs have morphed to better enable quadrupedal movement, and the hands and feet have also been altered into 3-digit pads. The digits topped with incredibly sharp claws used to pin and slash through opponent's skin and armor. The C2 is less resistant to small arms than the C1, reliant on their speed and numbers to quickly bog down prey and enable their two-legged allies to arrive. Rad-C3, the One. The C3 is the culmination of the abnormal biomass's unholy terrors. Bipedal in stature and loosely humanoid, the similarities end there. The head is smooth, broken only by darkened pits lit by small glowing red eyes. The mouth is largely unseen, opening into a featureless gap to spill or spit a highly corrosive acidic liquid, capable of melting through even a seal's armor. Towering above even seals at 8 to 9 feet, the C3's body is unnaturally featureless. The skin is composed of blackened biomass material oozing a tar-like substance and occasionally sloughing off the body, leaving a spreading trail of corruption in their wake. Smooth chitinous armor covers the abomination much like the Rad-8B, but is broken by gaps to allow full range of motion. The arms are bizarrely long, stretching nearly to the ground. Claws extend from its exposed fingers, capable of rendering terrible wounds on those within its reach. The strange liquid dropping from its body is thrown by the C3 in globules at prey, exploding on impact into strong web-like strands capable of holding the opponent in place as the creature closes the distance. The biomass material forming this towering abomination is the source of its main strength. Grievous wounds that would kill anything else are shrugged off, the biomass quickly knitting itself back together. Limbs removed from its frame can be near instantly reattached and restored. Only the most devastating of wounds can slow its regeneration, barring fire. The smallest of flame can burn the skin of the creature, rendering it unable to regrow, and sufficient fire will turn the C3 into a walking fireball, quickly burning it to ash. If the Rad-C are ever returned to the game, the C3 is restricted to LPMs, similarly to the Rad-8A and Rad-8B. Rad-CA. A mutation directly caused by the serum, Rad-C now affects canines. Rad-CA1. Rabid. The first form, Rabid, takes the appearance of an entirely blackened dog, dependent on what breed it was. Though black in color, it has complete absence of fur. Bright red boils litter its body, a sign of the transformation. Its jaw is able to open wider than usual, providing for dangerous bites that can go through limbs. Due to being a dog, it is easier to take down with small amounts of firearms. Paired with its speed and small size, they can be absolutely devastating in packs. Howdy there, gamers. So, yeah, that wraps up the Immune Guide. It's, long, so I wanted to make a video about it, just because a lot of people don't really like reading generally. So, that's why I made the rule guide video as well. So yeah, these are, I guess, simple enough to make. So let me know if you want more of these. I'm more than happy with making these because, like I said, a lot of people don't like reading. I heard that the Seal Guide got revamped, so I'm probably gonna look into that, maybe make a video about that. But yeah, I figured I might as well get this out for Christmas, because what I originally wanted to do was make this for Halloween, with Dukesy and Talk About Funny, but Talk About Funny ended up getting coronavirus, and then like a week later, Dukesy ended up getting it, and yeah, this entire project was cursed. Don't worry about them in case you are gonna. They're fine. They're better than ever, in fact. But yeah, the whole situation kind of sucked, and yeah, I ended up just having to make it here. And after a lot of procrastination as well. One of the main reasons why I made this is just because of those like 2 foot tall Descendants that literally everybody's been using at this point. Like, you get stepped on once, or stepped near for that matter, your entire body just shatters into ashes on the ground. Like, why? What? Come on, man. I got a few videos in the pipeline that should be coming up before 2021. And yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. If you want to buy something to support me, link down below to the Roblox merch. You know, Christmas stuff, Snow Frog and Cairo Frog. Aside of that though, I want to thank you all for coming out here, and yeah.